Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to one of my favorite shows of the month, the first Tuesday coffee chat with Jack Spirko and John Willis. I'm Nicole Sauce. And, well, let's just start with this. Good morning, Jack. How was March for you, Jack? Tell us about that.
The longest month that ever monthed. It was horrible. I don't understand what happened. It was just like I woke up and it was like Groundhog Day, except it was a month. It was March forever. And I think it's the way the days landed. I actually ended up with like Monday was the 1st, I think, of March. And then Friday was the 31st. So it was like work weeks, maximum work weeks in a month. I did like 4 podcasts more than an average month without doing any extra ones or anything. And it just felt like it went forever. And then a million things going on. My grill top got destroyed by a storm.
Really?
Yeah, not really the top. So I have a Blackstone, the bigger one. You know, you've got one too. I bought one of the diamond plate covers.
Yeah.
Instead of the stupid plastic covers that fall apart.
Melt.
Yeah.
Melt.
Yeah, that too. The wind picked it up and like hurled it out our window. But those new uprights, we put it in the outdoor kitchen. It hit that and like wrapped around it. So the upright didn't save the roof; it saved the window because that thing was booking when it hit that. So we had like a couple of weeks ago, we had a storm with like 85-mile-an-hour straight lines.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was March, and all my projects took longer than expected. Typical stuff, and it's freezing one day and 100 degrees the next. So yay, March.
March.
It's March for me because apparently some team won something yesterday or something. I don't really know who because I don't pay attention to sports ball, especially college sports ball.
I didn't know it. I forgot March Madness. I guess that's what that is, right?
Yeah.
I totally didn't pay attention to that. John, how was your March?
Good. You know, what we need to point out is that this year is a quarter way over with. So accelerate and just, get the things done that you said you were going to get done or that you need to get done. You're missing 25% of the year now at this point. And just like Jack, we were super warm. Everything put flowers on all the fruit trees and then it froze. We had fixed the aquaponics system and then damn if it didn't freeze and crack again. I have a brand new pump I have to put in because we had a pump just go down in the aquaponics system, but nothing's going to stop us. I mean, it's just normal shit. If we didn't have that happen, what would we talk about? I mean, everything's great. Everything grows. There's nothing wrong. My sheep only eat what I want them to eat. We wouldn't even have a show without some chaos.
Yeah, it's 100%.
Never eat only what you want them to eat. That's not in their nature.
No, the only thing worse than that is a goat.
A goat is worse.
Oh, no. Why not both?
Well, goats like
perfect
Porsches.
Idea.
My understanding is goats like to walk on top of Porsches.
On anything they like to walk on top of.
But especially Porsches.
Yeah, there used to be no fences here. So I would be in Nashville and I get a call from the sheriff and he's like, hey, just letting you know, your goats are out by the road. And I said, are they on the cliff or are they actually in the road? He's like, oh no. People just, they're worried about the goats being on the cliff, but they've never got out. When we put fences up, that's when they started getting out of the fence. When there was no fence, they pretty much stayed where we wanted them to stay.
Yeah. There was a challenge. It's challenge issued.
Yes.
There's a lesson in there.
Yeah.
That works on people too.
No more well, you can't just shoot people. Like the goats, we can just end those goats. We can just eliminate the leader goat.
Jack, what are your thoughts on that statement?
I'm not so sure we can't just shoot people. Maybe we shouldn't, but
it's
an awful big word.
He was like,
did you see?
I agree. I thought it was funny the way it came out. We can't just shoot people.
Did you see AOC got her burner account got busted out, and she was actually telling people that I can't wait until some transgender go crazy and actually end your life. She was saying that to Matt Walsh and other people. But she got busted out on her account. That happens typically. That's happened in our industry sometimes. You'll have some guy that's just troll, and he'll forget that he's logged in under his account. He'll make a comment and then delete it and make the same comment on the burner account. Well, he doesn't realize that until we refresh our feed, it's in our notifications. You see that happen.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. I don't know anything about this, but so she was using like a second Twitter handle.
Yes.
And forgot which one she was logged in under. Gee.
Yep.
You wouldn't expect a person that's an intellectual powerhouse like AOC to forget something like that.
Yeah. I don't know how that happened. So a backhoe digs a 14-foot hole a dog can't smell through. Jack Spirko.
I have said that.
Apparently you have said that. I don't know why that would have come up in this conversation, but there you are. People are just helpfully pointing things out.
Table, the nose doesn't work anymore, man.
I wonder if the dog can. I wonder if the dog can sense it after it goes through pigs.
Probably not. And if it does, who cares?
I guess.
Sense, right?
I guess, yeah.
No, don't mess with a person that has a background in underground construction. I can pull you underneath a highway with a directional boring rig and just cut you loose, and you're gone. If you don't think a person will fit in a hole with an 8-inch back reamer, I can just tell you you're wrong.
Ouch. All the horrible things we can do to people on today's Tuesday Live. This is why it's fun to have coffee with these guys. You just never know where it is going to go.
Fortunately, there's no rum in the coffee because the way this conversation is going, it would be downhill from here.
Yeah, if I had rum in the morning, man, the rest of the day would be just not good. And I actually get to go pick up a pallet of solar panels today. Later.
Oh, cool. So that's something productive.
Yeah. I needed 10 for my solar build, and the price break on just getting a whole pallet and reselling some was way better.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And Sean Mills was involved in this at this point. So now we're doing that. I'll be selling solar panels in about 2 days if anybody's interested. 460 watt bifacial. Huh?
How many you got for sale?
I've got 29, assuming none broke, 29 for sale. 275 includes sales tax. I am running it through my business, so it's I have to show the sales tax part, but
right.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I like round numbers. Did you mean to put that up on?
No, I thought you put it up. I just started.
No, I was trying to start at the same time. Okay. Jack and I were doing dueling comments there.
Dueling comments.
Okay, well let's talk about BRICS.
Yeah.
Which we all tried. John and I tried to call it Brexit yesterday for some reason because we were having
it's like the whole damn alphabet at this point. But like Scully says, it's not the countries that matter.
Yeah.
It's all those the XYZ, LGBTQ, LMNOP, XYZ. But there's only a couple countries in there that have any powerhouse, and Brazil really is not one of them. I mean, they have fuel, but their whole system.
So here's reality. This is the GDP of the G7, which is us, Germany, England, Japan, the economic powerhouse of the world, the economic hegemony since forever. And this goes back to 1994. And it's a steady decline in the G7. And very recently, the BRICS nations overtook the entire G7 in GDP. And this is with the United States fucking around with the number in obscene ways. Like a few years ago, they decided to include future pension payouts in the year that they were ledgered to go out in the future for that year's GDP. Meaning if you work for me and you're a teacher, John, and I have put money into your pension fund that year that will equate future payouts, the GDP doesn't go out in 20 years. It goes out now.
Right.
And I remember when you said that. Kind of games, this is what happens. So it's a little bit bigger of a deal, I think, than, they don't have any power. This is power of the human population. This is that there's more than half the world represented in those 5 countries by population. And what's happening is also much bigger than just like Brazil and how powerful is Brazil relative to the whole. What you have is now a new form of trading alliance and more people writing the dollar out, and basically the death of the global reserve system of the dollar. And that's why I wanted to talk about it today, because I'm telling you, this is way bigger. This chart should be on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, everywhere, and you won't see it there. Nobody will talk about this because what it means is pretty screwed up for the global economic system. Last week, I covered this on Monday, and by Wednesday of last week, France did a deal to buy or sell natural gas. I don't remember which direction the trade went, with China in yuan. So a NATO ally stepped outside of the dollar reserve system in the energy market, right? Brazil and China right now are on a full-on agreement that they're going to trade commodities using Brazil's currency and China's currency. Russia and China are doing the same. Japan yesterday or the day before announced that they will now buy oil from Russia above the cap set by the alliance against Russia. In other words, what they said is you can buy Russian oil, but you can only pay $60 a barrel, not market price. And it was killing Russia economically. Freaking Japan, one of our strongest allies, just stepped out of that agreement. We are in a place where the dollar's death, and I hate the hype. You guys know that. But we're in a place where the dollar's death is accelerating just massively. And I don't think people get exactly what the advantage is to us of having the reserve currency. But the way I explain it is just imagine that the reserve currency of the United States was oranges. And California couldn't grow oranges anymore for some reason. Florida would be like, well, it works, right? Because before Georgia can trade with Pennsylvania, they have to convert their currency to oranges. And Florida has a monopoly on the orange, let's say, right? So that would be extremely advantageous to Florida. Now take it for 70 years that it's that way, and then take it away. And what happens to the economy of Florida when you do that? That's the United States reserve currency system. That's the petrodollar. And we have been so irresponsible with the dollar. We deserve it. We deserve it.
So the real question is, what does that look like to a normal person like me?
It looks like more inflation than you've seen in your adult life. It looks like weakening U.S. strategic power across the planet, because the majority of our power is not hard power, it's soft power. So we take our military in and we blow shit up, and we're really good at that, but that has limited effect. Our primary means of power and control of other nations is that we give them money. We create vassals. That is the means by which the U.S. empire is held up. And we have an unlimited, despite all the angst about, oh, well, we need a debt ceiling limit rate. They're always going to do that. It's all bullshit. If we want to send $100 billion to say Guatemala or wherever the hell else country you make up Timbuktu sideways, we can do it anytime we want. And when they get the money, they can use it. And that gives us incredible control of moving the pieces on the chessboard wherever we want. This death of our petrodollar, this death of our world reserve status, takes that away from the U.S. It is effectively the first real stage in ending the empire. So you've seen the empire becoming more and more on the edge of fall over the last 30 years, heavily. And a lot of stupid things done. But when you start to see that crater, that's when the fall actually starts. This is the fall of the United States empire. You're standing at the front of it looking at it.
So Brazil, Venezuela, Weimar.
Well, Venezuela doesn't really factor into this very much at this point. They do have a lot of oil, but they're not really a heavy hitter in this trade alliance, right?
No,
so
I mean our economy compared to their past collapses.
Yeah. I don't think the United States will look like Venezuela. Maybe Argentina. Yeah,
not Weimar.
Argentina, where like you get into this exact same thing, and you can kind of see this already, like where the police can't help you, but they can hurt you. Like, does that sound familiar? Like that type of thing. Like some parts of Argentina were relatively stable and safe, and some parts were really, really, really dangerous. Does that sound familiar? I'm just saying, But the money was devalued everywhere. I mean, Fernando Aguirre, Fairfowl, he talks about how he remembers in the beginning of it, when it really started to fall apart, that he would see guys dickering over something, and then once they agreed to it, the guy pull a gold chain out of his pocket, throw it down on the thing, count a number of links, cut a link with a knife, and hand it to the guy, and then they would do the exchange. Like, I can see, that kind of thing. It's not necessarily going to be a gold chain, but that kind of thing, barter, parallel economies, everything we talk about, becoming more and more the case here. Hyperinflation, I don't know, because I'm very big on definitions, and definitions mean something. So when you use a word, so hyperinflation would be 50% inflation per month for 4 consecutive months, or 1,000% combined across a 12-month period. That is Weimar, right? And I don't know that you will see that, because what you would see is a massive, like, as people dump, the Federal Reserve will contract the supply. That's what they'll do, because that's what they have to do. So remember, when we pay debt off in a fractional reserve system, we actually disintegrate money. We shrink the supply, which sounds crazy, but it's how it works. As long as the new money isn't created with other debt, right? So there's a lot of ways they can contract the supply. They can literally push toxic assets off the balance sheet and just say, we don't care about these things anymore. They're gone. They're dead, because they're already nothing. They're already just an entry in a ledger that doesn't really do anything. So they have some tools, but it's not going to be pretty. And it seems like a perfect place to say we need CBDCs now. And I think that's already the game of it. You know,
that's on the Fed's website. They're rolling that out in July. It's actually it's up on their
it's like a test. It's going to be 100% voluntary. You can use it if you want to.
And, kind of like getting your tax return in a card instead of a check.
Well, that's how they're going to pay it. That's how any of the federal stuff's going to be paid, is with CBDCs, from what they're saying. Did you see the deep fake with the UK's Minister of Finance with Zelensky? Did you catch any of that?
No.
So she thought she was speaking to him, and he said, "How's the rollout going?" And she says, "It's on schedule. There's $1,000 threshold. You can't use any cash, basically above $1,000. That's gray market. We're going to lower that to 400 to 600, and it'll be jailable and a fine, and it'll be illegal to use anything other than CBDC." And at the end, he says, "Well, I think the future currency for all of Europe is firewood." And she realized, oh shit, that might not be Zelensky I'm speaking. Now, the whole thing could have been a deep fake, but it was entertaining nonetheless.
Huh. Oh, no, I have not seen that. But yeah, I think that might be a pretty valid currency.
It is valid. I know how much work it takes to make firewood.
The thing is, like, so when you look at commodities like natural gas and oil, Japan is showing you what will eventually happen. I don't care who the other party is. The one that has it to sell, you'll buy it from them.
Yes.
So these countries, one by one, will cave. Like Japan, I don't think you can understate the willingness of Japan to pay market rate to Russia in the current situation. Like, I guarantee you, people at our State Department had freaking mental shutdowns equivalent to trans people on TikTok when that happened. Like, they were jumping out of windows and screaming at their mother. That is one of our absolute staunchest allies just stepping out and going, you know what, this doesn't work for us. We're sorry.
Well, as they should.
As they should.
As they should. And that's the thing. Like, people are all mad about it. I'm like, what would you do? What would you do?
The oil for the market price.
Right. There's no,
like that.
Like, are you required to? I mean, you have agreements, but at some point, you do what's best for your citizens, just like you do what's best for your family.
Well, it's fair weather fans. I mean, if the ship is on fire and there's a ship next to it, where are you going to stay?
Don't get on. Renegade Butcher said, "It's not me, it's you."
He's a funny guy.
The unsoftened version of a breakup.
I don't need AI to write that line for me.
No, that's an old line. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I have just been trying to hit on people that, like, all the stuff that we teach, food production, parallel economy, running a business, lifestyle design, get out of the big cities. Like, that's becoming more important right now than it ever has been in history, because you already see what happens to the cities when they begin to decay. A lot of the cities that look pretty stable right now, as our influence and control begins to decay, they're going to have as many or more problems as some of the ones that are already obvious. Maybe more, because the people in San Francisco or LA know to expect it, where people in other cities a little smaller that haven't had eruptions yet may not expect it. Because if somebody would have told you before what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, you would have told them if you'd ever been to Kenosha, you would have said you're smoking crack.
Mm-hmm.
It's Kenosha's one of those. It's like a small town with a big population. It's not like your typical cities. I think they had a population of something like 75,000 people. And that's stretching the truth because of not quite actually in city limits and what have you. And yet it turned into a burning shithole. And so
look what happened to Detroit just on us also.
Yeah.
Detroit in the 50s was not terrible.
No, yeah. Detroit was one of the top blue class cities to live in the 50s, 60s. It really was. And when our auto industry started to fall apart is when it started to fall apart. And that shows you that, like, in ecology, we talk about like a keystone species. So like a predator species is a keystone species because it causes the prey to behave a certain way. So like literally some of the waterways were changed in Yellowstone when they reintroduced the wolf, right? That's called a trophic cascade. And so you've got that wolf as the keystone species. Then when you look at an economy, you have keystones in the economy. And if you pull that keystone out, everything collapses. It's just unlike an arch where if you pull the keystone, it comes down immediately. Like you get a slow fall inward. And that's what happened in Detroit. So the auto plants cut back. Then there were tons of people that set up factories in Detroit and they made parts for the auto industry. So when the auto industry started to close down plants, they closed down. Now you have two workforces and that affects everybody. The guy that works at the convenience store gets laid off because there's not a whole shitload of people driving past that intersection anymore. And then on top of that for Detroit also hit it like straight in the middle of putting the interstate system through and bypass traffic, which wasn't really a direct hit. But over time, when Detroit sucks and you have an interstate that goes right, you can go right through and get on either side of it where it's a little bit less sucky. So it was just like this one thing falls apart and everything caves in. And then that cascaded all the way out to where I'm from in Pennsylvania with the steel industry collapsing. And the steel industry collapses, the coal industry collapses because there were certain coals that burn hotter than other coals that were specifically used in the steel industry. So that put less demand on that coal. And so that's like it just starts like now think about that going globally. That's what you've got. You've got the 1960s to the 1980s, except at a global level, which with much broader implications. While we try to provoke a fight with two nuclear powers, yay!
Yeah, well, that's because we're committing suicide right now.
I believe that.
We are. Well, we're total. There's no other explanation at this point. This is not stupidity. This is committing suicide. Here's a good question, and I get this one a lot. What are your tips for starting a parallel economy relationship locally? Parentheses trade relationships. Mike Vertrice says finding locals is my biggest challenge, and I get this all the time. And rather than start one, I would say find one, join one, and start trading with people. And what that means is you are going to pay more for things that are locally produced.
Yeah.
Many times. And that's the part that is hard for people to get over mentally. But when stuff's not available or stuff is hyperinflating, if you've already got a trade relationship with somebody, that's much more secure. And it's a direct relationship. That's much more secure. And also think about how you are defining locally. Do you mean within a square mile of yourself? That's harder to do. But I look at the robust number of people in all of the networks we interoperate in, and there's a ton of ways to trade. And it goes beyond just like my hollow roast coffee for some chicken eggs, which is a very, small thing or problem to solve. When I have needed to do something, like I needed to get a pallet of really heavy solar panels shipped somewhere and they could not come to the hauler because Jack and John have both been to the hauler. There's a limit to the size of a semi truck that can come down this road. Just throwing that out there.
None of them.
And they're very heavy.
Yeah, no semi truck. You're missing half your road.
So because of the parallel society that we are already existing in, we had somewhere to have that delivered, and I'm picking it up today, right? That's a little thing, but that connection happened because of Sean Mills, who knew the person with the panels, direct relationship to buy them. Another person had a loading dock, so we didn't have to figure out a forklift, and it's done.
So the key there, though, is you had a thing of value. You acted as an importer
Yes.
You created a thing of value, which created a local effect of the distribution of the thing of value that you import. So
Right.
you either need to be importing value, right? If you want to do business locally, you either import value or you create value locally. So the big problem with all these people that want local economies, and I don't mean to be mean to anybody or anything, because I never do that. But okay, so you say, what's your what a value do you have to this local economy? And usually it comes down to U.S. space dollars, right? Like they have money, and that's fine, and that's good, and none of us hate money, and we will all take money. But what makes a local economy thrive is either people that are importing value or creating value in the local geography. And that's, then what is local? Like you said, like to me, like go start doing something that has value and start advertising your services locally and start doing business with people. And then do this crazy thing called talk to your customer. Like, don't just go like, here's like, if you're Tim Toolman and you're doing handyman work, and here's a bill for replacing the header over your door or whatever, like talk to them about, first of all, good sales. Like, what else can I do to help you? Do you know anybody? And then this is the most important one. What I'm looking for, and maybe you know somebody who can help me find this is, right? So be on both sides of that economy that you say you're looking for, as buyer and seller or manufacturer or importer. And because if you're not, what you're really saying is, I just want it, instead of actually creating the keystone. So you have to become, if it's not there already, like Nicole said, where you go find it, then you need to become the keystone in some way that starts to build it.
Yeah, be the connector and the networker, and what will happen is you will find it. You will find a million of them that exist near you. Like I can think of 7 or 8 that exist near me that are not cross-connected, or they're getting better cross-connected. And some of that is ego. Well, this is my network, and I don't want to, empower your network. But at this time, most of it is ignorance. And once they discover there's that other network, they're like, it's like when Tag from Life Done Free came to the Self-Reliance Festival. He was like, this is badass. Let's get our 2 networks together and help each other. That a lot of that is going on. The person asking about Georgia border, go find the Chattanooga Voluntary Society's website and connect with those people. That's one of our strongest parallel economies in the state that I've seen operating, really. They're doing it.
You have to be the guy. Like I have a guy for everything. I know who to call. And when I don't know, I have a guy to call when I don't know, because he knows who knows. You have to be the guy. If you don't produce the thing, you have to have something that somebody wants. And you might have to intake something that you don't want in order to trade that thing you took in to somebody else who needs it. And you have to have that ability to store that, right? And you need to be in a position where you have enough credit or value built up that you can continue to sustain to intake other things. You have to have commerce. And like chicken eggs are great when you're the only dude with chicken eggs. But as soon as everybody in your neighborhood has chicken eggs, they're of no value anymore. And most of the people complaining about it, they don't have any value, or they would already be trading value. They would know this. And Michael, I saw you mention Nashville. So I assume that you're in the Nashville or surrounding area. I could be wrong, but did you come here for Self-Reliance Festival? We just had over 600 people here, and a lot of them are from the Nashville area and surrounding areas. Like you might have to, when I need some stuff, I drive to Nashville to get it, right?
Yeah.
While we can still travel. So it's not out of the realm for trade to be, 100, 200 miles away right now while we can.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing is like, are you doing business locally already for anything that you can? Like when you drive down your road, everywhere you see a sign, that's local business. That's a local economy. So if you're driving past 12 signs to buy something at Walmart that you could have bought behind one of those 12 signs, and then you say you're looking for local economy, no, you're not. You're looking for the cheapest price. Right. So, and this is how we ended up with like all the little hardware stores closed, all the little coffee shops closed, because everybody went for the cheapest price and what have you, and some of those big brands actually probably did a better job in the beginning, and then their quality suffered as they expanded.
Yeah.
Right? So like, I mean, honest to God, back when Starbucks really started to roll out, if you went to Bill's coffee shop or you went to Starbucks, you got a dramatically better quality of product and service at Starbucks. That's now reversed, but that's how these giant brands work. They go out and they hit quality hard in the beginning during a growth phase, because you're not that spread out yet. You establish the brand, and then the law of numbers takes over. And if you're following the Pareto principle of 80-20, 80% of 50,000 employees is a lot of shitty employees.
Yeah.
Right. And they're a lot harder to get rid of and replace across time than, if you have 10 and 8 suck, you can identify the 8 really fast, and you can try to break Pareto, and you can at least get in some moderately effective mid-levels, and you can run pretty well. But this is what's happened because we've put our value on the dollar versus the person. We put our value on the dollar versus the quality of the product. And we've stopped caring about our local economies. We sit and we scream that we want local economy.
Yeah.
But yet, again, I guarantee you when John drives 2 hours to freaking Nashville, it's because he didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
If there was somebody down the road that sold the thing he was looking to buy, even if it was more expensive, it's not more expensive than a tank of gas to Nashville and back.
We have people in local groups here that are complaining all the time about gas next door here, right? It's 3 cents a gallon more. Well, I'm going to show him we're going to go to Paris to fill up, right? You're going to spend 30 minutes driving to Paris to fill up your whatever you have. It's just absolutely insane. And that's how the mindset is, man. They will go. Your eggs are too expensive. Well, go buy them from Walmart then. I don't know what to tell you. Buy the non-nutrition, sterilized, generic thing. Like your life shows it.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's all about, like, if you're the person selling, differentiate yourself, because I'm not in the chicken egg business. I'm in the duck egg business. We sell a dozen duck eggs for $12 now.
Yeah.
No complaints. Nobody. Because anybody that'll drive half an hour or more to get eggs just from us when there's eggs everywhere isn't going to make a decision over a couple bucks.
Have better customers. I tell people that all the time. There's people giving away eggs because they can't sell them at $2 a dozen, so they give them away at the end of the week. But the dude with $6 dozen eggs never has them because they're always sold out. It's the experience, right? And what else can you upsell them? What else is there when they're coming to get the eggs? Do you have pumpkins? Do you have, seasonal stuff? Do you have whatever it is? And just you have people have to like you, right? There's so many people that are like, I'm not a people person. I get it. I don't like most people either. But you know what I do like? I like a lot of money. So I can pretend long enough to become a people person that, what do you know? I'm a people person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing is, I'm seeing Mike here saying, people to hang out with, don't take a half day to get together. I have some of that near me, but it came here because I was sharing cool stuff I was doing and people were attracted to that. But I also found local people over time. But at the end of the day, I did spend 6 hours driving yesterday. Why? Because I went to John's to pick up a load of stuff left over from Self-Reliance Festival to bring back here for my event. And while I was there, we recorded a show and I got to see John and whoever else was in the area, right? So I do spend some windshield time connecting with different networks around the state. I wish that I had more time to invest, but I have other priorities where I'm investing my time. So I can't do it all the time, but I do it. And I do it with purpose. And I think that part's hard when you have a homestead, because I know Mike, he has a homestead. He actually adopted my pigs recently. And he has been to SRF, John. You've met him, but it was not this last one. And he's a great guy. And he's in a part of the state where it's sparse. But I also know I keep hearing people moving where he is. So part of it is we need to keep talking to each other about where we are and then make your pilgrimages. Like I'm trying to get to different Freedom Cell or other network events once a year in Tennessee so that we start going to each other's thing. We start making these connections because at some point I am going to need a part for my roaster that I no longer can order. And I'm going to need somebody to make it for me. I don't know who that person is. And it may not be, the exact same thing. But if it makes my roaster go from not working to working, that's what I care about at that moment.
Yeah.
And as far as hanging out, like people don't take half a day to hang out. Like I don't.
It's like I don't have a half a day to hang out with anybody.
And when I get together with people, like I don't want to know anything about somebody. I don't need to hear any negative shit from anybody, especially about somebody I don't know. And that's what people do when they hang out, right? Let's get together. Let's drink beer. Let's cook burgers. what value do you bring? Like, you have to bring a fucking shitload of value for me to have any conversation where you and I breathe the same air. And I'm not saying that to you, Mike. You're welcome to come here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, walk in that door, show up. We'll hang out for an hour. We'll talk. We'll look at the property or whatever. But most people like that want to hang out. I don't hang out with people that don't own businesses for the most part. I don't hang out with people who are not going to elevate me. And I've spent a lot of time dragging people up just to watch them climb their way back down. So yeah, I don't hang out.
Yeah, you'll go half a day to shoot guns with people. Hey, Tactical, if you're hearing this and you could let Mama and Sauce know my coffee cup's empty, I would love a bailout. I'm just going to throw that one out there. That's why it's important to have community, guys, so you can get coffee halfway through the show.
Yeah. And you gotta know people too, right? Like, there's people that'll come and I'm like, hey, that dude's a pretty cool dude. But then when you've been around him a few times, you're like, this guy's not going anywhere. Right? I have people that pack all their stuff in a car and move here to come work here and do everything it takes to get the job, and then nothing it takes to keep the job. Right. Yeah. Most of my true friends, I do business with them, or they actually work here with me. Like, it's a community, right? And we're doing our thing, and we're busy doing it.
Well, and nobody's upset when you don't hear from the people doing their thing for a while, and then you hear from them again. Because that's the other thing is constant interaction for me is hard. I interact a lot with people, and I tend to interact more with people I'm doing business with. But at the same time, if all I do is interact, which is an important piece of keeping the relationship, then I don't actually get my stuff done. So I don't know. Everybody I hang out with knows that I go dark and then I come back, and I go dark and I come back.
Well, I'm running 16 hours a day with people, right? High energy. I want to sit down for 2 hours with my wife and just have dinner. Like, we drove out of town yesterday to spend time together because everywhere we would go here, there's going to be people, right? We just want to go where we can sit and just do our thing. So, and then somebody said, so what about people that don't think they have or bring value? Well, you better get good at being lonely, or you better figure it out. Like, everybody has something. You're going to catch something from everybody. Just make sure that you have something of value. You have something to teach, or you better develop something to teach.
There's nobody with no value.
Yeah.
It's whether or not they have clarified for themselves what their value is. And it's actually a really great question for personal development and growth. You need to sit down and make a list of everything you're good at, even if you're not paid for it, because maybe you could be, and everything you're bad at. Don't do that shit or get better at it, right? Like, that's like life management 101. The shit you suck at, that's what you pay somebody to do. The shit you're good at, that's the stuff you do. And the shit you're good at but you hate, you do the other shit until you're so good at it you can pay people to do the stuff you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right? And then you divide your life that way. And then you have a surplus of value. Then you just figure out how to market it. You know, I have people think, well, I don't know what I would do. And you talk to them and they're a fucking electrician and they work for like McBride Electric or some big thing. Like, you know, I just paid a dude $600 to install a giant ass fan in my garage. He came in and did it in 2 fucking hours on a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why he has a company of his own now, even though he also used to work for the same company you do, because he was willing to go out and work sideline on weekends and shit like that until he had enough of a book of business and referrals to go out for himself. And he's making 3 times what a staff electrician makes. But you just keep doing what you're doing and say you have no value. That's fine.
If you need a job, go buy, they call them a goat, or so. It's like a billy goat, right? You can get them for like 50 grand. You could finance this thing to move sheds with. This is the conversation. Hey, I need my shed moved. Okay, I can do it in 3 months. Okay, how much to do it this weekend? I will pay you whatever that amount is, 24 hours a day. Well, it's going to be an extra okay, $2,000. Be here tonight, right? You can set your price. This dude drives all day long doing these things, and people pay him in $100 bills. Like, there's plenty of business. If you're the guy and you have referrals, people will pay you anything you ask. All you have to do is show up and do the job. Jeff, my friend up the road here, flies a crew in from California to do construction work on their properties and puts them in a hotel for 30 days at a time because we can't get local dudes that will show up consistently to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for the super sticker, Mike, whoever you sent that to.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Whoever we is.
We don't know. But
We
thank you.
Our family's on. Thank
There's
you.
3 channels where it could go.
So yeah, like you're talking like that. Like that's what people need to think of too. Like don't be afraid to finance something that can make you money, because the worst thing you can do is have it repossessed, which you don't have it in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. So like I was thinking of the dude that had that freaking sawmill.
Yeah.
At your place, John.
Yes.
And I watched him cut that 6x6 in a couple minutes.
Yep.
And I'm like, what does a 12-foot 6x6 beam cost?
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not even saying to sell the 6x6 beam. I'm just saying if I have woodlands and I can drop trees and let them season off and have you come mill it for me, I am happy to pay you 20% of what I would pay for that piece of lumber in a store. And I know it's better quality lumber at the same time. Right. Well, that's a lot of money for the guy running the sawmill. And one of the things I think that really hurts people is they look at stuff like that and they go, that's too much money to invest. That's why it's a good investment, because if you go into business selling chickens or eggs or whatever, everybody in the world can emulate your business in 5 minutes. But because people fear larger cost of entry businesses, once you have that piece of equipment, you pretty much have a monopoly.
Yeah.
And just be likable. Like just do it. If you can do what you say you're going to do and people like you, you're going to be above the dude who just says that he's going to do what he can do. All those skins they cut off of all those pine trees, Jack, I had them leave them there. I just took all those things and bolted them to a lean-to for the sheep. That shit's been sitting out there over a year in the rain, and those slabs, some of them are like 4, 5, 6 inches thick. Like even those skins that they were going to throw away, that's totally usable wood, man. Like you can use every bit of those things. Yeah,
I know a dude, like the way he built his business. He started out just pressure washing driveways and sidewalks.
Yeah,
and he did it as a side hustle. He would go out on Saturdays and Sundays because people are home. And he'd just drive around with it, look for people that were outside so he didn't have to knock on a door, and stop and tell them what he did. And they'd be like, well, I don't know that really need it. Oh, you think it's clean? Do you want me to show you? I'll just clean a little spot. And then he would pull his thing out and clean like a little dot.
Yep.
Well, now there's this driveway with this pristine, clean dot. And the rest of the driveway's nasty. And he's like, yeah, $50, I'll do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he had your phone number. 50% of people that would let him make the dot would go ahead and pay him to do the whole thing. And of course he'd leave his business card, get their information. And he would do shit like when he was going to drive a neighborhood, I'm going to be in your neighborhood. I'll do it for $10 off.
Put your phone number number on their driveway. And
it wasn't a cheap pressure washer, but it wasn't like something the city uses or something. It was like probably a couple grand, and it did a really good job. And then Denny started getting other things that he could offer, kind of going the handyman route. And he ended up, he was pulling down a couple $100,000 a year, and a lot of it was cash. And you figure out what to do with that on your own.
Yep. Thanks for the super sticker, K-Bonk. Strong Roots Resources says, I started my business, which is Strong Root Resources, with an electric Ryobi mower and trimmer, a good attitude, and solid communication skills. And basically, he took equipment he was already using at his place after a sudden job transition and made money that way, to the point where he could not necessarily, he had to say no to people, and he had to grow, and he had to change. And now he's doing permaculture consults and coaching for people all over the state. It's pretty cool. That's what happens when you start. You don't necessarily know where that's going to go, but I need to bring value somewhere, and I need to make money somewhere or pay for whatever. And then next thing you know, you're like, well, now I see the path, and I'm going to go down this path, and it grows. And if you keep an open mind, I think when you're pursuing something like that, it does become clear. As much as I love to plan things out in advance, sometimes it's just like, you just got to go.
If Jake freaking Robinson can flip raw land, I don't want to hear anybody tell me that making money is beyond them. I don't want to hear it. Like, if Jake Robinson can flip raw land, you can figure out something to do. We love to pick on Jake. I ain't seen Jake in a while.
He's okay.
He's okay?
We had all the tornadic stuff come through Friday, and so we've heard from him since then that he did not get tornadoed. That's what we know.
So K-Bonk's got 4 super chats on the board, so I think he bounced from channel to channel and hit us all up. Thank you for
Thanks for super chatting all of us. Yeah, I see that. Cool. Yes, we are simultaneously streaming to 3 YouTube channels and other places.
My Facebook, my Twitch, and my Odyssey. So we're like on 7 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why you see all the things coming, and sometimes you'll see things coming in that you're like, I don't even see that person in the comments. That's why.
We have a Jake sighting from Tom. He was in a live feed last week. I guess I missed it.
We need a little Jake sighting icon.
A Jake sighting icon.
There's been a Jake sighting. Yes. Well, so this is something I see about building value at Self-Reliance Festival. One of the reasons I am willing to invest as much time and energy and passion into Self-Reliance Festival as I do, and John has his own motivations, I'm sure, is people get interested in that topic and the speakers, and they make a leap of faith and they come. And coming to Self-Reliance Festival, the ticket compared to other festivals is very reasonably priced. But it still feels hard to people because they need to make it out to rural Tennessee and figure out, am I camping? Am I buying lodging? And that's a barrier for some people. They've decided to jump over that barrier and come. And then I think every time we've had this conversation where I say, who doesn't think they have something of value? And hands go up. And then I'll ask somebody. And that means they're willing to put their hand up in a crowd, which is another barrier they've just overcome, right? This is good. And I'll say, what did you do? What do you do for a living? I'm retired. What did you do? We had one last time who paints signs. And then I'll say, does anybody here need a sign?
Yep.
Hands will go up. I have never found anybody who was willing to raise their hand in a group like that, who then said something that they did know how to do where somebody else didn't need that. Yeah. And many times that person will walk away with a contract if they're willing to.
I took her over and I took her in the building and showed her all those signs. We had just bought 10 signs at $165 a piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something where spending time deciding what your value is rather than asking yourself, do I have value, is going to bring you further along, because it's there. If you have been able to stay alive this long, you got to have some skills somewhere. I don't know what they are.
You could rent yourself out to a greenhouse operation as a CO2 generator, I guess, if you're really desperate. But I mean, here's something you're doing that's making you have value somewhere. Yeah. And if not, then you could be like, I was talking about this last week, that like people talk about like, I'm working on it or whatever, and I'm going to make more money someday or whatever. Like, you ask them like, so what is the promotion probability in your company and what does it look like? They don't know. Right. Like, I guess if my boss gets promoted, okay, well, how many bosses do you have? What is the structure? How many places are? If you did get promoted, how much money would it be? What impact would it have on your life? What skill sets do you need to add? What value could you bring to your employer so that they would look at promoting you? Is that even feasible? Because a lot of times people are in positions where they're not getting promoted. They could go out and call down the angels and bring business to the company in a suitcase, and they're not getting promoted. Well, once you determine that's the case, then you do the same analysis outside.
Yeah.
Right. And then it means, and if you're not doing something like that, then the whole talk of getting more money someday when things turn around, pick up, whatever, is bullshit. Right. If you're not actively seeking to grow, I promise you won't.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of things I can promise people, and I can't promise you.
Oh, the internet took Jack out. Or my internet went out.
You won't, right? You won't accidentally grow.
I feel like I just heard you say this yesterday. Didn't you just have this conversation on your live yesterday?
No. Yesterday we talked about sorghum.
Okay. That's a really good show. I listened to that on my way home from John's
last week.
I watched something yesterday, and you literally just had this conversation. So it must have been just within the last few days.
It was last week. Yeah. It was like you can't sit there and expect change. When I used to do consulting, and it's why I don't, because I hate it. But I hate having people pay me for advice and watch them not do it. But if I would talk to a business, and especially a mid-sized business or better, and I'm talking to like C-level people, directors or whatever, and if they would use a phrase like, when things pick up, I'm out. I'm done. I can't help you. I can't ethically take your money at this point. You're passive. And you're paying me to become active, and I can't do that for you.
Right. Plus, your success rate, when you deal with non-performance people, your success rate goes down. You need your success rate to be 100%.
I think, Chuck, Peoples said he's ordering a sign from the person who didn't think they had value and paint signs.
No, Chuck's ordering a sign from Benchmark Signs and Gifts. The very first thing that came in this building when we built it are 2 signs from Benchmark Signs and Gifts. And he's got a big CNC router. He's built a huge compound, beautiful home. I've watched him grow from day one. And he was just consistent. He would hit me up. It's like, hey, can we do some signs? Hey, can we do these? Hey, can you sell those? And he actually bugged the shit out of me for a while. I'm like, who is this guy? And now we send business to him. Our show sponsors for our private podcast. He does all the signs that are on those walls where we sat yesterday, Nicole. And he turns them around like in days.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things like that people can be making money on. Like, here's one that I've had in my head, and I'll throw it out there because I'm not going to do it. I don't have to freaking time, right? So one of the hottest things in permaculture right now is the black soldier fly stuff.
Yep.
And the bins that are really good, that are fabricated, they're very expensive. And they're very expensive because they're bulky as shit. And it's a lot of injection molding type. So the setup's high on them. And so they sell these great big pods. So nobody can afford the big pods. So everybody goes out and makes these rigmarole, Rubbermaid bids and stuff, and they work okay, but they don't work anywhere near as good as the biopods they call. Well, I would figure out a standard size Rubbermaid tub, and I would fabricate the innards to an exact pitch match, the overlay on the lip that prevents crawl out, all that. That would go in a flat fucking box. Once you had that design down pat, you could outsource that shit overseas if you really wanted to. I'd prefer not to. And I would not be fucking bandsawing PVC apart and shit like that. People can do it for themselves. And it would be it just snap in, maybe snap together, snap in. And now you're able to take a $400 Black Soldier Fly biopod and replicate it for probably a sale price of about $50. But keep telling me there's no new ideas to be had.
Yeah, flat packet IKEA
while I was smoking a little grass. So I'm just saying,
I feel like a 3D printer could just ramp you up quickly.
I think a 3D printer could build you a prototype in that. I don't think it would be a sustainable model of production. But there's probably a material that would be not likely to break down. It can handle being wet and shit. That somebody with some sort of CNC or laser cutter or something, that once they had the design, could actually produce it relatively quickly. And it would need to be something, my guess would be, because I'm thinking like 100-gallon tub would be the size to go with this to make it worth the parts, where they would actually have to interlock so that they could ship flat. But you'd want to find, you reverse engineer. What is the cheapest large flat box I can ship?
Yeah.
Then what's the biggest pod I can make that the innards will go in that box? And then you just sell the part that's hard to make. And you let a person go down to freaking Home Depot or Lowe's and buy the bin for $15. And then you teach your customers, you know what? Once you have a waste source, you need to be buying 100 of these. You need 100 of these.
Yeah.
And now you've got a product. You've got frass, which can become compost. You've got the grubs, which sell like crazy. Plus, you've got free chicken feed. There's your local economy, by the way. Not the guy making the inserts, but the guy making the grubs. I'm just saying, there's so much out there that people could do.
Watch some videos on freeze drying and dehydrating black soldier flies. They're all over YouTube, and they give the money breakdown. And you can get the machine for about $6,000, and it's a conveyor belt system. And in a 20-foot shipping container, they said you could do $60,000 in a 90-day period on your startup. And they actually showed all the math. It's pretty interesting.
See, and then I would say if you really wanted to multiply that side on the production side, go find all these local butcher shops that are busy as shit. And I mean more like the slaughter places that do chickens and deer and everything else. And say, I'll set the pods up. You just throw your offal in there.
Yeah.
Well, they're actually feeding them the tailings out of beer and mead making and stuff. They're using those grains. And then they don't have that smell also to them.
If you do it right, they don't stink even when you're feeding them like guts.
Got it.
That would be, I'm going to bring the pods. Like if you did this with you by the time you did this, you should know this, but it'd be like, I'm going to bring the pods. I'm going to set them up with coffee grinds or whatever. do not put anything in there until I tell you to.
Yeah.
And once you start putting stuff in there, never fill it higher than here, and use your regular disposal method if you have surplus. And you would have somebody feeding your flies for you, and you're solving their problem. They're solving yours. You have multiple outputs. You have free feedstock. Because the next thing so I've been digging into black soldier fly nets because I'm trying to give people all these tools that we already have that can be put together in systems of design. Black soldier fly frost, which is the waste, is not fertilizer. It's poop. Okay, it's not worm castings, but it's optimum feed for worms.
Mm-hmm.
So then you set up a vermicomposting operation and you're pushing your frost into your vermicompost. Now you've got supercharged microbes. Throw some biochar in that shit. You've got a business. And you've got a startup cost here of a few $1,000s. Now, the only reason I'm not doing it is I make more money sitting here talking in this microphone than I do going out there and doing that. But if I was freaking broke right now, there's no way I would sit around waiting for a job. I know a dude that makes $85,000 a year cleaning swimming pools.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not a job. So he only takes as many. He's like, I don't want any more business. I don't take any more customers. I take a customer when I lose a customer. That's his business model because he doesn't want to work any harder than he does because he's working 70-hour weeks in the summer and barely at all in the winter. And he's fine with that. He's balanced his cash flow. He knows what to do. He's got a lot of customers that are like on an annual plan. So they pay the same all year, but they're paying a lower, they're paying a fair rate per time he shows up. But that way his cash flow is evened out. He doesn't want any more work.
Yeah. And if you really want to make money, clean ponds for rich people, right? Rich people have expensive fish. I used to work for Pond Doctor and we maintained like the Hyatt Regency ponds and they'd have parrots and waterfalls and shit. And we'd get in there and clean those ponds up and deal with those. And that's fat money, man. Just deal with people that have money. If you don't live where there's money, you're going to make a little bit less money, but people with more money pay, they give you more of their money.
Yes.
So
their motivation is not cheapest usually. There's usually a different value they're looking for.
Let's go back to John here. He says he's selling chicks for $4 a piece. That's great. I just was at the feed store recently and I walked back to see what was in the cage and it said all chicks sold, all ducks sold, all goslings sold. And I was only back there to look at them because I think they're cool, right? So I was talking to them and I'm like, oh guys, you're all going home. You're all sold already. And the dude hears me and he goes, they're all sold for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah.
They've got pre-orders on everything they can expect to come in 4 weeks out. And they're selling birds for like $5 a piece. But you know what you can really make money doing? Half chicken tractoring, right? So grow those chicks till they're about 8 to 10 weeks old. And people will pay $25 a piece for them, which is more than the person that grows them for the same period of time and then processes them into meat will get for a processed, cleaned chicken. You can sell the layer that's only a month out or so from laying for more than you'd get for the meat chicken.
Yep.
But one piece of advice on that, barnyard mix. I don't know why, but all these new chicken keepers don't want nothing to do. They want to know it's a XYZ breed. So pick something and run with it.
That's what we're about to do is set up individual runs. So we've got barred rocks, purple Orpingtons. Yep. So we know what we're hatching out when we hatch those eggs.
Look at this. Murdoch's sells.
Oh, sorry.
Ah! Murdoch's, I don't know who they are, sells buff Orpingtons at 8 weeks for $30 a bird.
Yeah.
And that's good too, right? Rather than buying straight runs, you go in there. Is it worth it to pay that to get a bird that, number one, you know what it is? It's made it to 30 weeks. That sucker's healthy. And you know whether it's a rooster or a hen right off the bat.
And you know it's not going to die in the brooder on day 2 because a lot of them do. There's a high mortality rate.
Yeah.
Especially new people that have never kept birds before.
Yep.
Yeah. We've got birds everywhere right now. I've got a bunch of my bantam chickens. They're all hatching freak babies because they're ducklings.
Yep.
So the baby's hatching and the mother's like,
you look funny.
Ah, my kid's a freak. Screw it. Let's go.
Why is it jumping in the water?
Yeah, yeah. What's weird this year, though, is like I had one runner duck and she hatched some babies and like all the chickens lost their babies already. Like the baby duck self-identified as duck and are like, that's the mama. And they all left the chicken. He was over it in like an hour, but she was pretty upset at first. And I got a ton. I I need to video this, but I don't want to upset them because I'm afraid they're going to crack their eggs because they get so upset.
Yeah.
I've got 2 ducks and 4 bantam chickens in one clump on a mountain of eggs, which I hate because some of them are going to be out of time and whatnot. But I'm like,
yeah.
I literally can't bother them anymore. Like, they attack me. There's one Muscovy. There's a duck. There's like 3 chickens, and then like other chickens are trying to get in on the game, and I don't know what we'll end up with, but
it's hard
fun.
Chaos is what that is. Yeah, we got so the Muscovy has been setting. She is due this week if she's going to hatch them. We marked the eggs. There are 6 that she did not kick out of the nest, so it's only 6 eggs.
Yeah,
but now both Muscovies are there. Facing 2 directions, and you don't want any part of that nest.
No, they'll jack your shit up.
Stay away. So we'll see. And of course the khaki Campbells have been like drive-by shooting eggs under there.
Oh, that's what they do. That's exactly like, oh, somebody's here. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. Sometimes they'll lay an egg and it's not really under there.
Yeah.
And then you'll see one on the nest will reach out with its beak and pull it in.
Yeah.
Mine do that all the time. You'll see them like, no, I know that one's new. You're not getting that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's there. Anyway, back to what we were saying. Like, there is opportunity everywhere with this stuff, guys. Everywhere. Yeah. But you have to see, the problem most people have is they don't understand that in many instances, you're not tying into a market, you're creating a market. So even though there is a market for duck eggs or for chicks or for half-grown pullets or whatever it is, there might be a market on the broad scale, but where you are locally, there isn't a market yet. And the great part about that is not only can you create the market, then you can effing own the market, right? So you establish the price space. Like, it was funny, like people on Craigslist, back when we first started selling eggs 10 years ago, we were selling for eight a dozen back then. Everybody was selling duck eggs for like $4 a dozen.
Yep. They're still doing that.
We put together a solid marketing plan. I did the Duck Chronicles videos, right? They're like, but you're Jack Spirko, the podcast. I'm like, none of these people buying eggs from me know jack shit about that. They don't care. They cared about a professional website, professional marketing, did some referral work with some chiropractors for the health thing, hooked into some nail polish salons because the Asian population there buys the crap out of it. And then once we did that, we watched everybody's price on Craigslist and all go up.
Yeah.
We set the floor and then we raised it. And we don't even make a lot of money on that now. We only keep about 40 birds now. So it's just pocket money. My wife calls it duck money, right? But I mean, like, we're not even serious about it. Like, because John's saying, like, if you're going to do that model, you're not going to make a living on duck eggs. I don't care how many ducks you have and how many eggs you sell. You will build a customer base. And then your question needs to become, what else can I sell them? Well, I bet you if you started growing like 4 of the easiest microgreens you could grow, put them prettily into a clamshell, that every one of your customers would leave with 2 or 3 of those clamshells at $5 a clamshell, right? Now you've got a product that's a much higher margin product that's actually pretty low labor. I wouldn't do any of the fussy shit like John Dowie does selling to restaurants and all. And then what else can I sell them? Freaking John Willis right here. I'll sell your ass gummy bears, right? Like, I'm already shipping shit to people. Like, what can you put in the add to the cart suggestion? Except instead of add to the cart online, we're talking add to cart in real life. All you're doing is building the customer base and then heaping as much into the sales channel as you can from a product perspective. And then it's low risk because let's say you build out a pretty good book of business. You bring a product in, you go small with it at first. It either sells out like crazy and you get a demand, and then you can build up, or it does like shit and you go, okay, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to find what fits my market.
Yes.
Especially if it's something you don't have to put labor into, right? If we can buy it in bulk and it doesn't expire, right? Rocks and minerals. Amanda just sold a ton of rocks and minerals.
Yep.
And you can leave them out in the rain. Like, they don't go anywhere. Nothing happens to them. Gummy bears, we bring in 5,000 pounds of gummy bears at a time and we flip them over in 90 days. They make them as we order them, but you wouldn't want to sit on those for, a year, right?
No.
So if we're getting towards expiration date, we just put them in smaller packages and we give them away for free just to re-up the next batch. But same with shirts. We bring in 120 shirts every Monday. We never rerun the same design. All 3 of us are wearing a design that I've done. And then we send our shirts to friends and people that, we can cross promote with. So we get a little bit of eyeballs there. You see Jack wear our shirts all the time, Nicole. And then we sell them off. And then if we have extras and it wasn't a hot seller, we just do it as a value add on the next sale, right? So we're always moving inventory out. We don't have to warehouse, and it just spurs people. So even if it wasn't a big seller, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to buy this one because I'm going to get this other one at half price, next month or next week or whatever. It's easy to do, just like the pumpkin thing, right? Most people selling seasonal stuff, they don't grow that. It's awesome if you can come to the pumpkin patch and see where it was grown. But a dude that works at the post office here in town, I'll bet you he makes almost as much selling pumpkins and seasonal stuff as he does working for the post office. And I go, where do you grow all that? I don't grow it. I get it from Bob down the road. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm going to sell pumpkins out on my side of town.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I find it. So I just saw Jack say, give your crosses a name, and all people want is a name.
Yeah.
So we've experimented with this on coffee, because I do like these single farm coffees. Right now I have a Guatemala that I'm going to send you some of, Jack. It's a honey process. And I don't love medium roast. I love dark roast. The medium on this, though, it's like smooth vanilla fruit. So delicious. And I marketed it as Guatemala. And it kind of sells. And I talked about it. I described what it does. I bet you if I rename that something snazzy with honey in the title.
Yeah.
Like Honey Bucket, although probably that's not the best graphic for people, but
Guatemalan.
Yeah, Guatemalan Honey Bucket. All of a sudden I will sell out. And we've been kind of doing back and forth on, do we name it by the farm name, or do we make some weird random name that we make up when we're feeling loopy in the morning having coffee. Mama Sauce and I will brainstorm names. The names always sell more. So you're not wrong.
Yeah, Guatemalan honey.
Yeah.
Guatemalan honey roast. I think it's not really a roast. It's a process.
It's a process. But, we could say it'll be more like, we do one every, like I'll do vacation blend. Mm-hmm. Vacation blend sells out.
Yeah.
And I don't know, people are like, oh, cool, it's the vacation one, or we'll name it after a mountain, or whatever. It's really into Honey Hole. It's worse than Honey Bucket. So, yes, and Chuck, this is why I bought hollerroast.com spelled wrong, because everybody does that.
Does that wrong, too.
Yeah.
Here, Marco says he sells chicks at $15.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Chicks are...
I paid $8 a bird for breasts, and I got a mixed batch of a bunch of different colors because I want them to interbreed, and I wanted mixed genetics.
Okay.
But yeah, Holler Hive Roast, exactly, something like that.
Hive Roast, Morning Honey Rise.
Yeah, see, that name would probably totally get people.
Yeah. Rethink everything you thought you knew about coffee with Morning Honey Rise.
Well, now I got to launch it next month.
And you'll have a group of friends, right? Like when we have an art design, I'll send it out to 15, 20 people just in a mass text, and we'll get input back. And sometimes you'll have a dude that gives you input that never makes sense, right? So you stop sending it to that dude. But we bounce that information, and then it evolves a couple times, and then we put the product out, right? You'll figure out who your people are and where the input is valuable or where it's not. And then we just picked up 400 pallets here. We got them all for free. They were pretty much brand new. You can take those suckers and paint them like American flags. You can sell pallets just like IBC totes. I'm able to get IBC totes for free. I can sell IBC totes for $45 pretty frequently, or I can sell them all day long for $35, right? And we get them for free. So the people buying them could also get them for free. They just haven't done the footwork to figure out how to get them.
That's the barrel game right there.
Yeah.
I just had an interesting thought when you were talking about, let's talk about eggs. I was listening to this thing this week about people are using potatoes for Easter.
I saw that.
Did you see that? Because egg shortages or whatever. And we're sitting here on more eggs than all of us have more eggs than we know what to do with. I'm
giving away 120 eggs at a time, and I can do that every other day. Giving them away, just giving them to.
But I think it's perception versus reality there. A lot of this stuff that people think is scarce is not. And yet, even when
Correct.
it's scarce, they still don't want to pay the dude with the pastured eggs more than a couple bucks a dozen for them.
When you couldn't get toilet paper and Clorox bleach, you know who had it every day? Lowe's did. People
Yep.
don't go to Lowe's to look for it, though.
Yeah.
Amazon had it. Uline had it. Commercial places.
Dollar General had it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I walked in, I was like, well, there's the toilet paper. It's smaller packages. You can't buy the Walmart cube, but you can buy this if you need it.
Yeah. Yeah, when people were like, all the preppers went crazy when COVID started and they were all buying wheat and barley and shit. It's like, why didn't you buy that shit before? But, oh, by the way, if you want it, go down to the feed store. Right? They're on honeyvillegrain.com with a 7-month lead time to buy a 50-pound sack of wheat and pay like a ridiculous shipping fee because it takes a lot to ship a 50-pound sack to your house. Like, go down, you got a feed store near you? Yeah, go down there. They'll sell you all the freaking wheat, barley, all that shit you want. I'm not saying you need it, but if you want it, go there or go to Homebrew Store. They got raw grain out the ass. They'll sell you whatever you need. Any color, flavor of the rainbow, you can get your grain in. And people just don't think outside that narrow, defined area that they're in.
And the Amish Mennonite stores have it all the time. You can always get it. And if they don't, they'll order it and have it next week for you.
Mike's getting 50 pounds of feed wheat for $10.
That's a good price.
You know what the difference between feed wheat in a 50-pound sack and wheat for you in a 50-pound sack are? A little
Threshing.
more chaff and $25.
Yeah, threshing.
Right.
That's
it's wheat. It's wheat. Feed, seed, and food are all the same. It's wheat. Where do you think we got the food wheat in this field, and the animal wheat in this field, and the seed wheat in this field? The seed wheat is for growing the human wheat, but we're gonna call it seed wheat. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
There's a super cool Instagram that I've been following, and this dude planted on the side of his, like the area between the sidewalk and the road. He planted it in wheat, and it was I don't know, 20 feet long by whatever. And he harvested this up, and he planted it with like a jang seeder, watered it, sprouted it, cut it by hand, went to thresh it, and he's like, oh, this threshing shit's a lot of work. So he bought this $200 thresher that worked really well. And at the end, he had a 5-gallon bucket of wheat that he had grown in his front yard. Pretty fascinating. Like, how much wheat, how much flour does that make? And how much flour does an average person use on a year? Like, it's doable if you had to do it. It's just a neat, deal. I heard somebody talking the other day about planting out. I think we're going to plant out like 20 by 20 areas of like barley and different things. I was having a conversation with a dude about just putting in these cover crops just to grow and just, do individual little areas and just see what we can produce. Just grow it up and see what it does.
Yeah, that makes me think of something I discovered yesterday because somebody emailed me about this. There's something going on. It's been going on in India where they're taking these villages and they have like this contest who can do the most water capture. It's literally, they don't call it permaculture. It's the largest permaculture project in the world.
interesting.
Thousands of villages have competed in this, and the channel that has these out is run by a dude named Andrew Millison. And they're titled India's Water Revolution. And it's like number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 # to find them. And it is fascinating in the integrated local economies and the way, like, I look at this and I feel embarrassed for America. You're in the third world of the third world. These are all remote villages and stuff. And watching these people come together, talk about developing local economies and taking and completely rehydrating watersheds. And most of the work's being done by people with shovels and baskets.
Yep.
And it's literal terraforming. Like when Lawton talks about greening the desert, this is greening all the deserts. And it's totally worth looking up. And if it doesn't inspire you, I don't know what would inspire you. So these people are doing this with shovels and rakes and baskets. And we have metric shit tons of earth moving equipment sitting idle all the time in this country. We could be doing the same thing on marginal lands here.
And all it took was a contest.
And that's what it is. It's an NGO. It's a non-governmental organization that's running the whole thing. It's not the government at all. And so the next contest is actually who can do the most integrated improvement to the entire village. So they already had a winner of who did the most water harvest. And now anybody that got over a certain threshold of water harvest can compete at the next level.
That's brilliant.
And it looks like in like a 1980s Amway stadium when all these people are there to see who won and shit. Like it's a huge movement, right? Like it really is.
But that is, I mean, that's how human nature works. When we gamify or have a contest, suddenly people are willing to go for it who wouldn't.
Yeah.
And they'll do a lot more than if you were like, hey, I'll guarantee you $40 an hour if you do this thing.
Now, the one video I was watching this morning, because I was going through the series, the one guy that was talking through a translator basically said since they did this to their village, because these are farming villages, that's what they have, right? They have farms and they have plants and goats basically. And he said their input costs are half and their income is doubled. And the guy said, for you, he goes, no, village wide. The average person in this village has had their input cost cut in half while their income doubled. And when he said it, you looked and there's like 20 guys standing there and they're all freaking grinning like they won the fucking lottery.
Yeah.
Right. And this was all done with materials on site. They did, some of them are some larger stuff like some dams and have some concrete in them all. But 90% of what they've done is just moving dirt. That's all it is. And on contour, it's kind of cool. Like you guys know what swales are, you get big long swales. What they have are like swales that look like they're about 50 foot, and then there's not a sill, but a non-swaled part, and then another one, and then they're done in series.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of like the ones John has in the back where they're really deep.
Yeah.
And then they did this 30-40 thing in one of the villages where they took all of the pasture and they broke it into 30-foot by 40-foot sections. They burned all around like a little dirt mound wall around them, but not high, like a foot, 2. But in the downhill corner of each 30-40, they put it in a pit. So when they get the monsoon rains, that pit feels like a little pond. It percolates into the soil.
Mm-hmm.
I am absolutely blown away, and I sit here and go, we are so freaking spoiled. We are so freaking
We are.
Yeah. Nothing tries to kill you when you walk out your door every morning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't even think of that. Like, you're talking about the country that has like 4 of the top 20 deadliest snakes on the planet, like home of the king cobra and shit. Like, yeah. The Russell viper, that they just bite you because you're there.
I had a customer
like, hey, asshole, I'm here. Leave me alone. The Russell's viper's like, come on, bitch.
I had a customer here just
Starlink.
6 months in Africa, and he was talking about how free it is there. And I said, did you ever? Am I live? Am I good? I had a customer who was just in Africa, and I said, did you ever feel unsafe? And he said, oh no, it's so free there, man. It's so beautiful. I said, where were you? He said, Namibia. I go, they got cobras in Namibia. He's like, yeah, I didn't ever see a cobra though. He's like, but everybody loves Americans there because they don't see a lot of Americans. He said, I spent 6 months with a bunch of Afrikaans, white folks. And he said they spoke very broken English. Most of them speak Afrikaans. And he's like, I'm going back there. I just love it there. He said, I lived in Australia for a couple of years, and Australia is such a wreck now. He said, I don't have any desire to go back to Australia. He said, but I'm going to go back and spend another year in Africa. And I just thought that was cool. He's in a position where he can do whatever he wants to do. He's very well off here, but that's where he's choosing to go he feels it's just free there. And shit will kill you there.
Oh, yes. Shit will kill you everywhere. We're just
everywhere
from out here.
Yeah.
Careful where you ride your mountain bike in California at this point. You're liable to become a cat toy.
Mountain lions, yeah.
People are like, I can't understand why they're attacking bikers. And you're like, have you paid attention to what cats do? And you got this thing with the 2 wheels spinning going by. Like it's like total trigger. It's like dragging a string around the corner for your house cat, right? Like, so we have it here. We just have been so insulated for so long. And we have mountain lions showing up here. TVA said they have DNA on no less than 6 is what they said. And then we had a black panther or jaguar show up about 45 minutes from here 2 years ago. So they're here, and like wildlife will plant those animals there. They'll be collared. They won't tell you they're putting them there, but they do put them out there.
Yep. And then nobody knows what to do with the big cats because we haven't had them for so long here. So we have little bobcats, which, I mean, you don't want to be on the wrong end of a bobcat attack either, but the panther thing, like, that's going to kill me unless I kill it. So
You just need bigger dogs. That's what they use these dogs out west because of higher predator load for bears and mountain lions.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting how the wildlife is changing here. I don't know. I've been thinking a lot this week about, people are always like, how can you live in XYZ location? Because they have poisonous snakes, or they have tornadoes, or they have wildflower fires. And I'm like, where can I live where there's not a risk of some sort? I can't think of anywhere. I'm going to get avalanched or lightninged or bitten by a snake or a spider or roasted to death. I don't even know. Like, there's a million ways I can die all over the planet. And that's the human condition. So knowing what the dangers are is super helpful and how to avoid them, but not living somewhere because of a snake is not probably a thing I'm going to do. I just want to know the snake is there.
Tad's son was just bit by a copperhead last week. Which is if you get to choose your venomous snake, that's the least of them for sure.
Yeah.
And they transported him to Vanderbilt, but they didn't give him crofab until the following day. So his arm, and he's a little 8-year-old kid, his arm was literally the size of a baseball bat, and it's dripping out of the puncture wounds on the finger. And for some reason, they didn't dose him till the next day. He's home now. The swelling's down. I was bit October 1st, 86. And I was given anti-venom within the hour, and 6 bottles of anti-venom, went home the next day. And then, steroids and stuff for the next 6. I milked it. I was out of high school for 6 weeks with that snake bite. But I found it interesting that they did not dose him until over almost 24 hours later, which made no sense, especially as small as he was. But
it doesn't make sense with the size. It is pretty standard that they'll evaluate symptoms, and a lot of times they will only track symptoms with a copperhead but the antivenom also helps a lot with preventing localized necrosis, which is a real risk. Like, almost nobody dies of a copperhead. I think in the last 20 years, there's been like 4 verified documented deaths from copperheads in the United States. And one was a dude that was bit like 4 times and then went home and drank a beer.
Yeah.
And then like 2 were like straight up anaphylaxis, like dying from a bee sting. And the other one was a legitimate, like, dude got bit, sought treatment, still died. Right. And didn't really go anaphylactic, but it's still like, that's crazy. Like,
yeah, especially at Vanderbilt. No, and luckily no debridement, no fasciotomy or anything. Yeah. I just found it odd. And I thought I was just telling you because I know you know about that. So
I had my experience in 91. It was We had a beagle got hit right on the face, and took him to emergency care, four towns over, major city. $750 later, and what did they do? They gave him Benadryl, and they're like, "Hey, you need to treat this dog for fleas." Like, they didn't do shit for that dog. Yeah. Dogs usually either make it or they don't.
His face was swelled up twice like the size of his head, and he's drooling. And
there is a rattlesnake vaccine for dogs now. I just don't know if it really works or not. We don't have them here. I mean, we do, but right here, like, I've been here 10 years, I haven't seen a copperhead or a rattler one here. Now, the people that live down by the lake that are only a couple miles from me, they were always on next door. Copperheads. You're like, oh, shut up. Everything's a copperhead. They started posting pictures. I'm like, no, they got, because they like copperhead. They're cousins to the water moccasin, basically. Yep. So they're both a Kiskadon species, and they're down there like crazy. We never have seen a single one, and we've even had some of like the Nerodias, like the plain belly water snakes and stuff, show up here. And like, what are you doing here? Like, trying to eat my toads. Like, what do you do? Go back to the lake.
Yep.
But you produce such great toads.
Yeah, I guess that's it. With the rain this year, the toad population's back, and they're back in force, man. It's beautiful at night. Like, it's a serenade of those guys out there. Last year, even the toads were like, screw this, it's too dry, man. I'm migrating. That has nothing to do with what we're supposed to be talking about, does it?
What are we supposed to be talking about, Jack?
I don't remember. The failure of the dollar's reserve status. Just accept it's happening, and it's going to suck, and you better start building your life if you are not already.
Yeah. That's the thing. I told Jack, like, I'm going to be learning from this episode today because I don't pay real close attention to that other than being aware it's going to happen because I can't change it. And the best thing I can do is be more resilient here to the best of my ability and hopefully not lose all my stuff. But it's, and that's a very selfish way to look at it, but that's the only way I had to look at it, right? Like, I am this far from having the hauler paid off right now. I owe
I don't think it's selfish.
$11K.
If there was something you could be doing for humanity that would prevent the collapse of the dollar and it would benefit the whole world and you didn't do it, then I would call that selfish.
Yeah.
I don't believe that thing exists.
No.
And the most selfless thing you can do is share what you're doing with others, which is what you do as a podcaster. So I don't think it's selfish at all in the negative connotation. I think that people need to be more selfish in the positive connotation. And that means like putting yourself first. Well, that also means like putting your needs first. And so the more people can be selfish in a positive way, the less they can be sponges on society. Like you can't share anything until you have more than you need.
Right.
That's how it works. I didn't say want, I said need. You have to have more than you need to be able to share, because if you need something, you don't have it, you go tits up and you die. Right. So you have to generate surplus for yourself to have something to share with others. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with like local economies. Like you want a local economy. Well, you need to start building some value and putting it into your local economy. Have you ever like John, you've kept fish. So like you put your hand in the water and all the fish come because they expect food. Right. Or yesterday I was at one of my ponds and I was just pulling some gunk out of the some of the edge plants. Yeah. And like that was actually causing little plankton I can't see and whatever. And all the mosquito fish were coming in. They were eating like crazy. Right. So that's value being added to an ecosystem and it immediately attracts attention. That's how the economics work. When you start actually creating value and you make like those fish had to know, I couldn't just say, hey, fish, there's food over here. That's not going to work. Like I had to do something that communicated in their language that there was food and then they came. So that's what marketing is. Marketing is communicating in a language that your market will understand and respond to. And if you do that, you attract value. Now you can build an economy. Until you do that, you're talking.
So here's one. Won't people who grow food be able to pay off debt fast with hyperinflation?
Probably not.
So the thing about hyperinflation is as pricing goes up, there's still the need for the money part of that to buy the thing if you're using the monetary system. And so when you look at how that went down in Weimar, Germany, it actually became a catalyst of scarcity.
Yeah.
And the better thing at that point is to trade the food for something else I need if I'm producing a surplus of food, for example.
We're not getting Weimar, Germany. That's been something they've used to sell you silver and gold for freaking 100 years. What we get, like I said, they'll contract. And so what you may end up with is actually a currency shortage, a deflationary spiral. Or you get something like the 70s where you had stagflation, where you had inflation and deflation counteracting each other. Like who paid off their house with easy money in the 1970s? The answer is nobody. Nobody. That's who. Nobody. I wouldn't use it as an excuse to get into debt. I'll only put it that way. If it works out that way, great. But I mean, you have a capital scarcity. Then, like I have debt on my home right now that I could pay off. Mm-hmm. I don't want to. I have a 2 3/4% interest rate. Right. You're
making money on that deal right now.
Due on my home.
Yeah.
Then get rid of that debt. Right. I'm not worried about it at all. And I'm 25% of value on the loan. I'm 75% in equity. Like if I didn't have at least that, I'd probably go out and borrow that much against it, or would have when interest rates made sense. Because that's the other side of this. Like, so you have this inflationary spiral. You also have this increasing interest rates. And we don't really know what they're going to do because they're totally screwed. I mean, I guess coming back around to where we started, what you have to understand is like these banks have failed. They didn't fail because of risky investments. They didn't fail because of crypto. They failed because during all the COVID bullshit, the federal government, the Federal Reserve told all these banks to buy freaking treasury bonds, which are the gold standard for the safest bonds ever. And they bought all these bonds with like, these super low interest rates on them because it was just nepotism. We'll give you money. Now you buy the bond and we'll just make entries in ledgers. It'll all be good. Well, then interest rates went up and these banks, when they had shortfalls, they had to sell the gold standard safest investment in the world for less than they paid for it. So they couldn't cover the other side. So the investment that was risky was a United States government freaking treasury bond That's what destroyed these banks. And every bank's in the same situation. It's just a matter of how much shit they can move around to cover it up so that people don't run their banks. So all this shit about, well, all the big banks, those are secure because they said so. Not because they are. There isn't a bank out there that could cover the spread if this shit triggered on them right now. Not one. The reality is what they're doing now is they're trying to funnel depositors into the big banks. That's what they came out with the scare tactic. Oh, the big banks are safe. You should get out of your little bank. And then what's his name? The guy from Shark Tank. I had a clip of his on a couple of weeks ago. Kevin O'Leary, that jackass. He was on Fox News and he said, we don't need regional banks anymore. We need 4 to 6 giant nationalized banks, and that's it. Nobody cares about a regional bank anymore. They just want to make sure their payroll goes through. So if you can reduce the total number of banks, and by the way, Mr. O'Leary said it's still okay, John. You can still buy stock in them. Then you've got your funnel for your CBDC, because you don't even actually have to have a CBDC. All you have to have is a digital currency issued by the banks individually, because there's only 4 or 6 of them. You throw it all under FDIC, and you have a de facto CBDC run by the private banking system, because you didn't think they were going to give up the power, did you? Like, everybody thinks the government is the source of the CBDC.
Right.
It's ridiculous. The Federal Reserve is not going to give away their ability to print money to the government back unless the government ever actually takes it from them, and they own the government. So this is always going to stay on the side of the banks. And I think it's their final, like, Hail Mary pass to try to stave off the inflation. If they can do it quick enough before all these other CBDCs around the world are implemented, and a person walking around in Europe or Asia or whatever could just get a wallet and start basically transacting in the equivalent of Tether, but underneath the FDIC, then everybody would dollarize very, very rapidly throughout the world, except for the countries we've pissed off. And they'll probably go under the Chinese currency. And then we divide the world into that dichotomy. That'll be just wonderful. It'll be great.
Well, you'll teach the world a lesson, I guess.
The lesson is that nobody should have the power of monetary creation. That's the lesson. That's the lesson. Yep. It can't end any other way than this. It always ends this. Every time you create the ability to print money, it ends this way. It always looks a little different, but it's always the same pattern. We won't abuse the one ring of power, and 5 minutes later, I have the power, right? And we will abuse the power. That's why crypto turned into a shit show, other than Bitcoin, because the temptation to print money is something a human being is likely unable to resist. Why would I use your money if I can literally just roll out a freaking ticker symbol, put it on a few exchanges, raise $30 million in a way that can't really be interfered with yet, and then go out and blow the money? Why wouldn't I do that? Either I have ethics and I won't, or I don't have ethics, and there's a lot of people like that, and I will. So the government hates crypto because the crypto people are just doing what the governments have been doing for hundreds of years, printing money out of thin air.
Yeah.
So what rises from it?
We'll see. I think there's a good chance that a lot of people choose Bitcoin as their reserve currency, because it's one thing you cannot fuck with. You can even fuck with gold. And then you also like transactions. Like, the problem gold has is I can't move it, right? If I have a bar of gold here, and a piece of gold this big would be worth what, about 15 grand, and I want to buy $10 worth of gummy bears from John. How do I send you $10 worth of my gold bar?
Right.
Well, I put the gold bar into some sort of banking type institution, and they make an electric accounting transaction based on my gold reserve and your gold reserve. So now we're back to the banks. So if I'm using a cryptocurrency, and in my case, I would say Bitcoin, then I just send John $5. And John sends me my gummy bears, or $10. He sends me my gummy bears. And I get the fixed supply. And so I think but I think it'll be factions. I don't think everybody's going to do that. I think some people will line up for a lot of people are
totally
going to
happen.
CBDCs, because it'll be, what they'll do is they'll create some version of what do they call that shit where everybody gets money?
UBI.
UBI. Yeah, universal basic income will come up with. So why wouldn't you take your free money? And they'll put, what they're going to do, because China already does this, they'll put a expiration date on your money. So, John, you get your UBI, it's $900, $800, $1,000 a month. But if you don't spend it, it expires. And they'll also say, well, you can't spend it on certain things. You won't be able to spend it on guns. You won't be able to spend it on Bitcoin. Maybe you have to buy the bugs with it. I don't know. But that's why I'm just not going to live that way. I'm just not.
Yeah.
Now, if they want to send me their CBDCs and I can buy shit I was going to buy anyway with it, well, that's more of real money for me. And I'll never take it. Well, you're stupid. I'll take any money they give me. I'm just not going to be dependent on it.
This situation is going to incite more rage, though.
Oh, the rage is about to go stupid.
The rage, because there's going to be the UBI thing. There are going to be people who don't take it.
Yeah.
Rage against that. Then there's going to be rage when it disappears, and then there's going to be a whole rich people, poor people rage situation out of this that we know it's coming.
Yeah. Well, and there's going to be a lot of these people in all this trans activism. That's eventually going to get the choke chain jerked on it. And those people are going to go nuts because they've been led to believe that they're right and victory is imminent. So that's going to create rage. We seem to have forgotten about kind of all the race-based hatred underneath BLM because we have a new minority that's oppressed to use. That's the establishment has switched. If you've noticed that, you don't hear a lot about the needs of Black people in America right now. It's all about the trans people and the queer theory and all this other shit. And of course, they still bring it up. And of course, white people are still the worst, right? And it's the whitest white people who live in the whitest neighborhoods on the planet telling you that, just for the record, right? These are people that are on TV all week long in these major networks, and they literally flee to the Hamptons the second the weekend hits.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. And so that all is a powder keg. You've got these cities that are just on the, like, people are ready to lose their freaking minds. They're going to charge a former president in a completely political crime. I really hope none of the freaking stupid Trump tards started dadgone even an inkling of a riot today in New York City, because they'll turn it into January 6 2.0. Like, and I think they want a freaking violent meltdown. And they don't care which side fire. They just want the fight because then they can step in and step on the throats. And I just keep saying, get the hell away from these heavy population centers. You don't even have to get that far away. Just get far enough away that you can't, when you get to the part where when you open your side window and you spit as hard as you can into the wind, you don't hit your neighbor's house, you've gotten to a place where you're probably going to be okay. Until you do that, and I don't mean the big nice houses, I mean all the houses. They're spread out at least enough you can't spit on each other. Then you're probably going to be okay, because people flee into the cities during this shit for whatever reason it is. The people that cause trouble go where the population is and where the resources are, and that's where they are. They're not out where a guy like, me or somebody else is just going to go, well, I don't know. I never saw him. He wasn't here.
That's where the food lines are, right? That's where the handouts are. And if you want to see who's going to get on those systems, who took all the vax, right? Who took all the things, right? Who would have thought that people would have jumped on like they did with that? Well, you're giving out free money, or what could be free money, right? There's going to be even more of those. And as far as fleeing the cities, you just need to be far enough that when your neighbor's house catches on fire, yours won't catch on fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I got one here. I got a question for John on feeding dogs. I know you feed rabbits and chicken eggs, but I'm curious how many rabbits it takes a week to feed a large dog. I have a 130-pound Rottweiler.
So we have so many chickens and ducks laying eggs right now that my dogs aren't even hungry. They're not all laying in nest boxes. They're just laying wherever. And we know where some of the Easter egg spots are, where there's always a chicken under a tarp or something. The dogs are literally eating so many eggs right now for the last several months that they are not hungry at all. When I go to feed them, they don't even eat. I killed 2 roosters today, put them on the ground. The dog sniffed them and looked at me and was like, what do you want me to do with this thing? So I don't know what the real answer is. The real answer is probably that I'm feeding my dogs much more than they need. But
your rabbits are huge. I mean, I could club somebody.
Yeah. My rabbits are big. And I have probably 60 rabbits right now. I've been thinning. I have so many chickens and rabbits right now that I need to dispatch. I don't have enough dogs to actually eat them all. I'm very, very good at making meat. So my dogs run around Like you'll go out and you're like, what's that dog have? And it's the head and an arm of a rabbit. And people are
Yeah.
like, oh my God, when they
Yeah.
see it. I will give them food and then not give them food for a few days, and they'll show up with a piece of, rotted rabbit. They just sit them there until they get stinky, and then they just kind of chew on them. So the real answer is, I don't know. And my dogs are probably eating. They can eat whenever they want.
Yeah. So it's funny because I have 80-pound dogs plus the LGDs. I texted Joel Riles the other day because we're starting to transition to raw for some of them based on what we can produce here. And I said, how many rabbits for an 80-pound dog? And he said, I would start with a rabbit every other day. Make sure they eat all of it. Like they have access to all of it. He's like, you're also going to want to feed a place where you don't have to smell what happens next, because sometimes they decide to age it. And he went into some more detail, and he basically said, start there. Watch the dog's condition and see if it's getting too fat, feed it less. If it's losing too much weight, feed it more. Yeah. Based on that and based on the dog sizes I have, I realized I need probably 10 does here, 8 to 10 does if I want to keep up on that with rabbits only. Yeah. We have other things, but.
And that would be only because like eggs are great dog's food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you have like Lucy won't eat raw eggs.
Well, that sounds very finicky of her.
But Lucy would probably eat them if you just cracked them over a little bit of kibble, just a tiny bit of kibble, and put the egg. No.
Yeah.
And then with the rabbits too, when you start feeding rabbits and your dog's never seen one,
yeah, they don't know what to do.
Take a pair of scissors and just cut that belly open. And once they can get to those guts, once you do that a couple times, you won't have to do that.
Then they understand. Anymore. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Like there is a learning curve for everything, including a dog on something new and different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our dogs eat the feathers and everything, and it cleans that whole system out as they come out.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to bring up one from earlier. Self-doubt is the biggest obstacle to oneself. Find the 75 hard challenge and stick to it. You will change. I don't know if you know this, John, but Thomas, the guy who was doing on compound parking for SRF, he's in the middle of that right now.
Awesome.
I drive out and I say, do you need anything at Walmart? And he kind of looks shifty-eyed at me. And he said, oh, this is going to sound really weird. I don't need an expensive pair, but can you buy me a cheap pair of running shoes in this size?
Yep.
And then he felt compelled to tell me why. He was in the middle of 75 hard and he was going to work out with or without the shoes, but he had left his running shoes at home. And he did. Yeah. He kept it going through the festival. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's 2 45-minute workouts. One has to be outside, both can, rain or shine. You take a photograph of yourself every day. You read 10 pages of a book, follow some kind of diet. Any diet, doesn't matter what diet. There's a few other things. Drink a gallon of water, cold shower.
Yeah, well, and cold shower wasn't on the list when I saw it, but you have to post a picture of yourself every day with the hashtag.
You don't have to post. Well, you didn't have to post before. I don't think. You just had to take a picture.
Oh, take a picture. Yeah, and then if you miss any one of those things on any one of the days, you reset till you can do it for 75 straight days. No beer.
And no alcohol.
Yeah. Nope. I've seen it, like that has had a real uptick in our network. I've seen a ton of people doing that challenge.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. Yeah. MT Brand has been killing it. Yeah, he made like 45 days in, he had lost 16 pounds and he told me he's feeling great. I'm not going to share. But, yeah, I noticed that when I went into keto and stopped drinking the way I used to drink, I was like, I think I was hungover all the time, as it turns out.
When you go off is when you realize how big the change is.
Yeah.
Having aches and joints again and stuff. You're like, wait a minute, this is inflammation because I ate a freaking Dorito or something.
Yeah, or a roll with butter, like a good sourdough roll with butter is always good, and it always results in wheat knee.
Yeah, wheat knee.
So, Jack, are you still taking quercetin and zinc daily?
I am not. I am now taking it only during like cold and flu season. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good thing. It's a good mediation of viral diseases. It works really well. It's a good preventative, but it's not something you need to live on.
Yeah. I do it also when I know I'm going to be exposed to a bunch of strangers before an event. I'll do it for 2 weeks. the week before SRF and the week after.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm going to California on vacation later this month. I'll probably start a course of it because I'm going to be on an airplane with people.
You're going to be on a viral containment device for hours.
Yeah. So I'm not worried I'm going to die or nothing, but if I can avoid having a viral infection that's annoying in the middle of a vacation, I only get a couple of years. So
yeah,
that'll probably be good. That's I'm glad that person asked that because I really hadn't thought about it. But
yeah.
I do take every day is a significant amount of D3.
Yes.
Every day. That's my one thing that I do every single day is D3.
I take 30,000 IUs of D
That's what
every night right as I'm going to bed. And if like SRF, the day afterwards, I started kind of feeling throat maybe a little bit. So I took Q-Certain and zinc. I take that for a couple days, and then I don't take it unless I'm going to be around groups of people or if I start to feel something coming on. Like it used to be that I'd take a bunch of vitamin C, when you kind of feel like you're getting sick. Now it's Q-Certain and zinc.
So the other thing I take is K2 because K2 balances the D3. Like if you get in any kind of excess. Then the other thing I would say, if you're going to do the zinc thing regularly over time, you should be taking zinc that has a small amount of copper in it.
Yeah.
And the one I recommend is on my website at thesurvivalpodcast.com.
That one is swallowable for those of us who have trouble swallowing zinc.
It's very swallowable, but a doctor reached out to me. And I for those that are new to my stuff, I developed that when COVID really started ramping up, and it later became recommended protocol by several physicians. But I believe personally, I was the first one to develop the Q-Certain zinc stacking along with a few other things for COVID. And a doctor reached out to me and he said, I listened to everything you had to say. I figured you were full of shit. You're not. He's like, everything you said made sense. Everything I researched you claimed was there. But one thing you need to add is copper, because if you're taking excess zinc regularly, it competes in your gut biome for absorption with copper, and you can develop a copper deficiency, which can cause a lot of things that mimic things like, chronic fatigue syndrome and stuff like that. So
here's an interesting one on that topic. I took 30,000 D for 1 year. My blood serum didn't move a bit. And that happened to me in the negative way. Like I couldn't get it to go higher. And I was combining it with fat. So you need to combine D with fat. DK helps with absorption, but you need to balance that with if K makes your heart do weird things. I changed brands of D. Okay. And within a week, it made, so some people respond differently to different vitamin Ds. And I was working with a doctor at the time. He said, well, try this other brand of D and see if that works. And that's what did it for me.
And the other thing is, if you're overweight and gaining weight, you will almost chronically be D deficient because it's fat soluble, which means it also stores in fat. Mm-hmm. So as you're gaining weight, your body is grabbing D and it's putting it into your fat. And this is how humans were supposed to work. We would put on fat during the fall, and then we had a D3 battery to get us through winter when it was not sunshine and we were not making D3. And it's designed to use fat as a battery. And there's some other nutrients to do that as well. And if you are obese and growing, before I lost all the weight, my D3 levels were stupid low, and I'm outside all the time. I mean, all the time. And so just losing weight made my D3 levels go up.
Yeah, I don't think we absorb D from the sunlight like we used to. We've just spent too much time not doing it.
But you have to get a lot of exposure. Like, if you're running around and you don't want to get sunburned or whatever, but I mean, really, you need to be out in the peak of the sun of the day with as much skin exposed as possible, because that's how we evolved. We weren't born with t-shirts on, right? We were born outside. We lived outside. We didn't even have shoes for most of our existence as a species. And so the way we live today is not species appropriate to our evolution. So then we need, and I'm not advocating let's all go run around naked in the woods and roll in the mud.
Yeah, you are.
If we're not going to do that, then we need to use modern chemistry to account for what we've screwed up. And I think that's one that I believe that most people, even when they get their D3 levels checked and their doctor said, oh, it's normal, it's normal means you're the average of everybody in the line at the state fair waiting on a pretzel.
Yeah, normal.
That's what normal means. And you guys know this because you listen to my stuff, but the number that's considered too high for D3 is like 100 microliters or something like that. That is a completely arbitrary number that was made up in a time when it was an emergency in the minds of the people that did it, because we were heading into World War freaking II, and we were in the middle of the Great Depression, and they discovered this D thing, and they called it a vitamin. It's not even a vitamin, it's a hormone. And we had an epidemic of rickets in this country in children where their legs don't form right because they're deficient in D3. And they figured out if we give this shit to them, they can walk right. And that means that they'll be ready to go to war in another couple years. So we need to feed them this stuff. And they thought it was a vitamin because they didn't understand it. And they knew some vitamins had overdose thresholds. So they calculated what they thought the overdose threshold was at 300. And they said, well, did they need that much? No. So they arbitrarily divided the recommended maximum by 3 for no reason other than it had to be rushed through. And this is the 20s, late 20s, early 30s, and it's still that way today. And no one is even willing to have a discussion about it. And we constantly warn people, if you take too much vitamin D, you'll die.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely positively ridiculous. A person that's walking around with a 100, 120 microliter measurement of D3 is probably not going to get random variety viruses and stuff. They're just not going to get them. Or if they do, they won't know it.
Well, thanks, Joseph, for the super chat, wherever that is. And I do know, Jack, your time is running out.
Yep.
John wants to get back to saving the world at the SOE compound. So let's go once around the horn and just say whatever you want to say. We'll start with you, John.
Dude asked about medical backpack. Just send an email through the website and we'll discuss that. We put a new shirt out. This one says, what does it say? Speed, surprise, violence of action. That's our new shirt this week. I do a live feed every night at 9 o'clock on YouTube. If I'm not there, you can find me on Facebook. It's because I'm banned on YouTube occasionally. And we put out a ton of content about a lot of different things. I'm very easy to find. Just jump in and any night, ask whatever you want to ask, and we will talk about it.
Awesome. Jack, what do you got for us?
Well, first I'm going to real quick answer gratitude to Grace's question. Is it hard to transition a dog from store-bought kibble to raw food? Or even if, like, we feed our dogs now chicken and we do cook it and we pressure cook the bones separately so that they are completely easily consumed. And the answer is no. They are very happy to eat stuff like that. The other answer, though, is it may change their toilet habits, especially for a few weeks. So if you do not have an outside dog, I would recommend feeding very early and putting doggy out. And then you take it from there on your own. Now, as far as me, check out the survivalpodcast.com, where we have a new podcast every day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And this will be today's podcast because I'm tired.
That sounds perfect to me. All right. Well, I look forward to these chats every month because I never know where it's going to go. And it always goes in a surprising direction, as it did again. I knew we were going to talk about the petrodollar and the GDP thing, but I always learn a ton from these and get inspired, which is awesome at the beginning of a month where it's time to produce. And the beginning of every month, it's time to produce, as is the end of every month. But so thanks for making time for this, guys. If you were interested in the Dolce Guatemala bean, apparently I had a database glitch on my website and it was showing out of stock. It was only the medium roast, but it is totally in stock, and I fixed the database glitch while we were sitting here. So grab it while you can, because when that one's gone, it's gone. It's a seasonal bean. If you love delicious coffee, head on over to hollowroast.com and order it. I roast to order. So you will have, unicorns, farting, rainbows right there. And so sometimes it takes a few days to produce, but we get it out to you as fast as we can. Also, I have a podcast, also 5 days a week, livingfreeintennessee.com. Today's podcast will also be this show because I too am tired. Well, it's always first Tuesday is always. So next Tuesday we'll be on back to 12:30 on all of these channels except for TSP with guess who? Joel Salatin.
Oh wow,
That's
cool.
Always a good one.
It's gonna be a fun one. We'll see you then, guys.